With me here is Fleur Hassan-Nahoum, the Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem and co-founder of the UAE-Israel Business Council, Avi Melamed, Strategic Intelligence Analyst and founder of CEO of Inside the Middle East Intelligence Perspectives, and Samir Sinijlawi, a Fateh activist in Jerusalem and chairman of the Jerusalem Development Fund. And Fleur, normally a day to celebrate, but today, unfortunately, focus more on conflict than unity in Jerusalem.
It's really sad. Normally it is a day of celebration, and we in the municipality do all sorts of celebratory events for all types of ages and all types of people. But this is something that is not surprising me because it's been building up. It's been building up for the last 3 weeks. If anybody thinks this is spontaneous hostilities, they're wrong. This is a planned and very deliberated Hamas and other Muslim Brotherhood entities towards Israel, against Israel, for many, many different reasons. The first reason, I think, is that they want to distract the fact that perhaps there won't be Palestinian elections because Mahmoud Abbas understands that he may lose big. And so, you know, he's finding ways to distract his public. The second thing, of course, is the Sheikh Jarrah, which I have a lot to say about, but is, again, it's a political tool, has been utilized by the leadership, by the Palestinian leadership, in order to bring up and make the situation more combustible. And so this has been slowly and deliberately building up. And the last thing, if you ask me, this is the revenge for the Abraham Accords. As Jews and Arabs tried to be together, get more together, also in Jerusalem, as East Jerusalem and West Jerusalem collaborate more than ever, as the country, Israel, is looking to bring in Arab parties. Almost every party in the Knesset is now wanting to bring Arab parties. As this is happening, this is the pushback.
Right. Samir, you've heard Fleur's interpretation of events. Is that something you agree with?
I think what's happening today proves that claiming Jerusalem is united is a mirage. Jerusalem is divided, not only east and west, it's divided also in the west side between Haradim and secular Jews. It's a lot of division inside the city. And the only way to get out, the exit out of this division, to unify Jerusalem, we need to find a political situation. You cannot continue like this, controlling 400,000 Palestinians in the eastern side of Jerusalem, feeling that they are under continuous discrimination, not having any sense of equality, not in services, not in participating in the political process. This should come to an end. I think Jerusalem is a city that is bigger than any country. It's bigger than Israel. It's bigger than any religion. It is something universal. Jerusalem should be treated as a city for 3 religions, equally should be treated as a city for 2 nations. And nobody can claim exclusivity on this city. This is the way that we can drive this city into peace, drive this city into prosperity. Now it is the poorest city in both Israel and Palestine. This gives us a lot of indication that the strategy that Israel has started in '67 by occupying and annexing the city is a broken strategy, and it needs to change. I don't see any relation to Hamas to this. What's happening in the streets today is bigger than Hamas, bigger than Fateh, bigger than...
Hamas is shooting rockets at Jerusalem.
Hamas is doing a show. They want to ride the wave. They want to gain political gains out of this. What's happening is spontaneous. It comes from the people. The people are very connected to the religious sites. And we need to respect the sensitivity of Jerusalem by not touching any nerve in Jerusalem. And these nerves are the holy sites. Al-Aqsa is exclusive holy site for Muslim. Western Wall is exclusive site, holy site for Jews. And the Church of Sepulchre is the exclusive site, holy site for Christians. This should be kept. Nobody can claim that he have right in any other religious sites. If we change this status quo...
That you build a mosque on. It's not. How can you say it's exclusive to the Muslim people? I'm sorry. This is a holy site for both Jews and Muslims. I'm prepared to say that. Why aren't you prepared to say that it's also holy for Jews?
Do you accept?
That's the difference between you and me. I'm prepared to say that it's also holy for Muslims and also holy for Jews. Why are you not prepared to say that it's also holy for Jews?
Hundreds of years there has been a status quo. It was respected by the Ottoman, by the British, by the Jordanians,
but
Israel is now trying
our connection connection, our spiritual
Fleur,
connection.
Samir, we're going to go out for a break. There are no more red alerts down in Israel South, so Hamas is putting on quite a show, but one that with deadly consequences, both for Israel and Gaza. So that certainly has to, but we're going to continue this discussion. We're going to give Avi Melamed a chance to weigh in, a former advisor on Arab affairs to the legendary mayor of Jerusalem, Teddy Kalik. So stay with us. We are live in Jerusalem. And here with me in the Abu Tur neighborhood of Jerusalem is one of the city's deputy mayors, Fleur Hassan-Nahoum, Fateh activist Samir Sinijlawi, and Avi Melamed, a strategic intelligence analyst. We should also say former advisor on Arab affairs to the legendary mayor Teddy Kalik. And Avi, you heard before the break, Fleur saying this is deliberate escalation, basically coming from the top of the Palestinian leadership. Samir taking the view it's spontaneously coming up from the bottom. What's your interpretation?
Well, it's a conjunction of different issues. I mean, look, basically it reflects the growing and deepening Palestinian crisis. I mean, there is a couple of sources for that crisis. One is the fact that the Palestinian cause is plummeting in the Arab world. It's being downgraded in the Arab political agenda. The second thing is that the story of the elections actually exposed the deepening crisis within the Palestinians, because many of the Palestinians were afraid of the elections because they know that the elections would have led to a deepening crisis within the Palestinians, deepening the split between the Hamas and Fateh. And also, in addition to that, we have to take into consideration that during Ramadan, there is a growing tendency to become more religious. There is a lot of involvement of preachers that are involving and inciting. So you're looking at a conjunction of things that actually pushed this whole process. It wasn't something that was spontaneous, but it was something that's circulating and spilling out of control.
I want to say that you're going to hear booms on air while we're speaking. In many cases, that was fireworks, I believe. But we have also heard what sounds of stun grenades. That's a stun grenade, which means police are clashing right now. This is an Arab neighborhood, Silwan, which is right below us, that has been a scene of clashes between Israeli police and Palestinian activists. And also, we should say, Jewish nationalist activists, if you want to say them, that believe that they have the right to move into these kind of neighborhoods. That's been one of the issues at hand here. Samir, you heard Avi's interpretation. Do you want to respond to that?
Well, I think he just missed to mention the provocation that has happened, cutting the adhan in Al-Aqsa Mosque in the first nights of Ramadan, and then closing the Damascus gates for the celebrations of Ramadan and mass gathering. These provocations have led also to some anger from the people. I think the main reason for such escalations is occupation. 54 years of occupation for 400,000 people creates a lot of anger, creates a lot of resistance, it creates a lot of violence, because the violence of occupation will result in such a violence. People need to show their identity, their belonging. They need to show that this city belongs to them the same way it belongs to the Israelis. And here I think it's, again, a political problem.
Fleur, Samir says occupation. For Israelis, it's liberation that we're marking today.
Absolutely, it's liberation. And it's not just liberation, I think, for the Jews in the city. Samar and I, of course, differ in probably everything about Jerusalem. But ultimately, in the last 5 years, and I will agree with Samar on one thing, for many, many years, the Jerusalem municipality was not taking care, as it should have, of its Arab constituents. It wasn't. And on the one hand, you can't say it's one city, and on the other hand, to give less resources and not give the same services. But this changed in the last 5 years, and Rome, unfortunately, is not built in a day. 5 years ago, there was a strategic decision by the government of Israel to close social gaps in East Jerusalem, bringing unprecedented budgets of 2.1. We started with 2.1 billion shekels, and now it's becoming much more for three main things. One thing is education, the other thing is quality employment, and the third thing is infrastructural development. East Jerusalem is much cleaner than it was before this particular mayor came into power. East Jerusalem, we have incredible connections with spiritual leaders, with local community leaders. We've just opened a youth center, an incredibly big youth center in Shuafat. There are more young Arab East Jerusalemites in Jerusalem colleges and universities than there ever been. And I'm working very, very hard for their integration into good jobs in high tech. And so, yes, Rome wasn't built in a day, but we're doing everything that we can to close close social gaps and to bring real equality to the city. But I will say something. Samar said that they don't have political representation. That is the choice of the Arabs in East Jerusalem, that they choose not to vote. They can vote, and if they were strategic about it, they could have 3, 4, 5, even 6 members of city council, and they could get much more for their community, the way the ultra-Orthodox
We're going to continue this discussion, but I do want to go to our Emily Rose, who is at Israel, now headed to another extended, perhaps, operation with Hamas in the Gaza Strip.
Yes, the answer is yes. I think that we are going to look for the next couple of days for an escalation in the area of Gaza Strip. Gaza Strip, up until 6 o'clock this evening, Hamas was gaining a lot of achievements. Following 6 o'clock in the evening, when Hamas started shooting rockets at Israel, Hamas is entering what I call the gambling zone. Because Hamas made a basic calculation that he says, I'm, Hamas, willing to take an Israeli retaliation, assuming it's going to be not so severe and assuming it's going to be ended by the Eid al-Fitr, which is going to be this coming Wednesday. I'm not so sure that Hamas was not making a mistake in his calculation, because there are 2 components that Hamas has no control over. He doesn't know what's going to be the reaction of the Israeli government, and he doesn't know what's going to be the ramification of an Israeli military retaliation. It's going to be painful, it's going to be vast, it's going to be wide. It seems like both sides don't really have an interest to extend the conflict, but Hamas may find himself in the end of this round that he lost all the achievements that he gained up until today at 6 o'clock in the evening.
All right. I just again want to remind viewers, throughout this discussion, we are hearing explosions behind us. That's a combination of fireworks that you hear usually at the end of the Ramadan fast day and the celebration, but that's mixed with the sounds of stun grenades and certainly sounds like some live fire that also could be rubber bullets or actual live fire. No,
we didn't hear live fire.
Okay, no live fire that we've heard here. Samir, I want to just give you a chance to respond to some of Fleur's comments that Palestinians could take part in the political process here, but have chosen not to.
Well, Palestinians would like to have self-determination, first of all. We don't want to be under an Israeli control or an Israeli government or an Israeli authority. The eastern part of the city belongs under international law to the Palestinian state to be, and our will to have self-determination should be respected. Now, let me tell you something. What would have been your reaction if you, as a Jew, have seen any Arab country invading one of the synagogues the way that the Israeli police invaded Al-Aqsa today?
We are going to have to go out for a break. We will be back to continue this discussion shortly. Stay with us on our continuing coverage here of Jerusalem Day. Here we are live in Jerusalem. The Gaza Strip. Still with us, Fleur Hassan-Nahoum, Avi Melamed, and Samir Sinijlawi. And Fleur, I want to give you a chance to respond. Samir saying you would raise the point that the Palestinians here can have the chance to participate in the political process, certainly in the municipal level, and choose not to. His response: Palestinians feeling they live under occupation do not want to take part in that.
Well, Samir spoke about self-determination, and my question to Samir is, what self-determination do the Palestinian people have under the Palestinian Authority, which is basically a brutal mafia dictatorship that only benefits its leaders and their close family? Where have people had the right to vote for their own leaders? 17 years Mahmoud Abbas has been in power. 17 years they haven't had elections, and guess what? He's found another excuse to postpone the elections this summer. So I really don't understand what self-determination they're getting. I can tell Samir this: the people that I work with in East Jerusalem, a lot of friends that I have, a lot of colleagues that I respect deeply, most people do not want to be living under the Palestinian Authority, which gives them nothing. No right to vote, no right for anything, and no opportunities. Ultimately, what we're doing right now in the Jerusalem municipality and the Israeli government is stretching our hand out to provide equal opportunities for every young person. And that's what we're doing, and we will continue to do it.
I want to give Samir a chance to respond briefly, and then give Avi a chance.
Well, this does not justify occupation. Yes, we have issues internally. We are frustrated from not having the elections. We are pushing for the elections, but these internal issues does not justify the continuation of the occupation. Let me ask you something. When was the last time the Israeli government initiated a housing project for Palestinians in East Jerusalem? None.
Just 2 weeks ago.
None.
In the extension to the Fateh neighborhood, and also
we didn't see
in the
one
planning
building.
of Wadi Jones, which will also include housing.
Fleur, we only see demolishing houses. We only see confiscating IDs, rejecting residency rights. Everything is working against us. The legislation, the Knesset, the government, the municipality, the security forces, the political power, the economical power, the military power. Everything in the city is working against Palestinians. This have one name. It's occupation. It's apartheid.
What you'll find is that you have a very interested municipality in trying to create partnerships, in trying to create real projects. And if you stretch out your hand, mine is stretched out, you will find a partner. You don't have to find an occupier. You will find a partner.
I do want to give Avi a chance to weigh in, because earlier you gave a fairly pessimistic prognosis on what's going to be happening between Israel and the Gaza Strip in the coming days. What about the situation in Jerusalem? We still have these flashpoints on the Temple Mount, the Haram el-Sharif. We have the flashpoint of Sheikh Jarrah and the housing situation there, which is still explosive. Where do you see the situation here in the city going in the coming weeks?
It's going to be tense. I think that maybe we'll be beyond this level of violence right now. Again, it depends also what will happen in the context of the story of Gaza Strip as well as the Palestinian Authority. In the end of the day, I would assume that there are lots of factors in the region that has an interest to calm things down. And basically, I predict it will percolate to the ground. But I want to say one last thing about that, and from a Jewish strategic perspective. The big story in the end of the day is the fact that the Palestinians thus far has failed to do what I call the leap of faith. They have failed to make the decisive historic decision whether they are willing to depart the victimhood situation and basically accept the existence of the State of Israel and the compromises that comes along with it. It does not mean that Israel is exempted from that, but I think that as long as the Palestinians will not be able to do that, we will see this continuation of this situation. And by the way, the best reflection of that is the deepening split within Fateh and Hamas, and you will hear more and more about it as the situation will escalate. Shortly, you will hear Fateh people saying to Hamas the same old story, and the Arab world, they will say to Hamas, you are leading once and time again Gaza Strip to disaster, to catastrophe. Your way of the armed resistance leading to nowhere, and you will see this situation continues.
Okay, Avi, thank you for that. And Samir, also some points. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. We are going to go to our Pierre Kloschandler at Damascus Gate, because unfortunately it does seem things are getting a little tenser there. Let's go to Pierre. Pierre, what is the situation?
Well, it's starting, and you can see the stun grenades being thrown on one of the commercial alleys, the Nablus Road. It started simply with one firecracker, and then in 1 second, all the policemen were on arm, their helmets on. We put our helmets on as well, and now suddenly the tension is rising up. We hear explosions. We've seen glass bottles being thrown by Palestinian demonstrators, and there is a lot of smoke here, but not from tear gas, mostly from the stun grenades that are being thrown by the police officers. Right now we are in the middle of the street, and there are still cars that have been caught by surprise by this upsurge of tension, and you can see the police forces that are quite massive, that are just here in full gear, ready to disperse whatever they can disperse. They've called the water cannon with the skunk liquid that is very, very, very smelly. There's a lot of explosions of stun grenades. I don't exactly know from where, probably further down toward the Museum Rockefeller at about 200 meters away from where we are. And it could just stop, as it could just erupt again. We don't know. It simply was a firecracker, and the whole situation started to burst again. Now, the same kind of firecracker puts a cypress tree on the Temple Mount, on the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, into fire, just as a result of a simple firecracker.
Okay, Pierre Cloche-Handler, a metaphor for the whole situation. One firecracker setting up another wave of violence. We're back with our guests. We only have a couple of minutes left. I want to give them each a brief final comment on the situation here in Jerusalem we're witnessing today. Samir.
Well, I think the scenes that we have seen today, the brutality of the Israeli police invading Al-Aqsa Mosque with the grenades, with the tear gas, these will not be erased from the memories easily. And I'm sure that if you have seen such a way of invading any synagogue by any regional Arab country in any capital, you would have also the same bad feeling, the same anger. I think this was a sin. It was a great political mistake committed by unexperienced, I can say, Minister of Internal Security.
I want to give Fleur.
I just say that we don't normally bring rocks to hit with people's heads to synagogues, and so you would never see any type of parallel here. What we have is a situation where people went to make trouble. These people were instigated by Hamas and by other Muslim Brotherhood actors in East Jerusalem, but in the region as well, and God knows who else. And they're being used as pawns, and they started the trouble. Israel normally doesn't go into the Temple Mount area at all. We only go in when there's trouble and things are dangerous, and that's what happened today.
All right, Avi, last word on Jerusalem, just 30 seconds. Any chance here that things are going to quiet down even in the coming days?
No, look, Jerusalem is an issue that will always spark fire. It's been an issue that it's a card, it's a pawn that's being used by different factors, not only the Palestinians or the Israelis or the Jews, by the Iranians, by Turkey, by Egypt, by all the region. Jerusalem is a card that's being used, and it will be continue to be used, and unfortunately it will be mostly in a context of scenes that we are seeing right now.
Jerusalem is supposed to be the city of peace. Hopefully it will be. It will be one day. Avi Melamed, Samir Sinijlawi, and Fleur Hassan-Nahoum, thank you for joining us on the special edition of I24 News. We are going out for a break, but unfortunately we are getting reports now of Israeli strikes